I want to tell you a story. It's about one specific night, a night when the world almost ended. Or, at least a whole lot of people thought it did.
Okay, so picture this. It's Sunday, October 30th, 1938, Halloween Eve. The Great Depression is grinding everyone down. Families are gathered together in their living rooms, just trying to find a rare moment of peace. And they're all huddled around the one glowing centerpiece in the home, the radio.
Now, to really get what's about to happen, you first have to understand the world these people were living in. You have to get why they were so ready, so primed to believe something that sounds completely unbelievable.
America in the fall of 1938, it was basically a powder keg of anxiety, just waiting for a spark. And wouldn't you know it, the radio was about to be the thing that lit the fuse.
I mean, think about this for a second. By 1935, you had twice as many American homes with a radio as you did with a telephone. This wasn't some niche gadget for the wealthy. This was the country's central nervous system.
And this thing, the radio, it wasn't just for entertainment. No, it was a lifeline. It was this trusted voice of authority that spoke right to you in your own living room. It brought you news and comfort in a world that just felt frighteningly unstable.
And here's the thing. People were already conditioned for this kind of news. For weeks, they had been huddled around their radios, hearing these urgent, breaking news bulletins about the Munich crisis in Europe. They were already used to hearing reports of troop movements and the threat of a new, high-tech war. So yeah, they were primed to believe. Okay, so the stage is set, right? And on this one Sunday night, a simple little battle for listeners' attention is about to accidentally spring the most elaborate, insane psychological trap in the history of broadcasting. Just look at the competition here. It's not even close. The most popular show in America, by a long shot, was a ventriloquist on NBC. He had a 34.8 Hopper rating, which is just massive. We're talking about a third of all listeners. Meanwhile, over on CBS, this 23-year-old kid named Orson Welles has his little artsy show with, less than 4% of the audience. A total nobody, comparatively.
And this is the critical moment. At 8 o'clock, Wells's show starts, and the announcer says very clearly they're about to do a play based on H.G. Wells's The War of the Worlds. But of course, almost nobody's listening. They're all over on the popular show. But then, around 12 minutes past the hour, the comedy act on that show ends, and some musical guest comes on. For millions of people, that was their cue to fiddle with the dial, see what else is on. They twist the knob and drop right into the middle of a living nightmare.
Because what these people tuned into, it didn't sound like a play. Not at all. It sounded like a perfectly real, escalating catastrophe, and it sounded absolutely terrifying. I mean, can you just imagine hearing that? Out of nowhere, with zero context, you just tune in, and what you hear sounds like a live reporter watching people get incinerated by a jet of flame from a Martian war machine. That is the moment that any curiosity just curdles into pure, raw fear. And the panic wasn't just in their heads. It was immediate, and it was real. This wasn't some vague feeling of unease. People were acting. In one block in Newark, more than 20 families just fled their homes, running with wet towels over their faces because they were completely convinced they were under a poison gas attack. Now, for a lot of listeners who were maybe still skeptical, still on the fence, this was the trigger. The moment they heard that official-sounding bodies were responding, the New Jersey State Militia, well, that was like throwing gasoline on the fire. It made it feel real. It gave it the stamp of authority that was so hard to dismiss. Suddenly, this wasn't just some weird report. This was a full-blown national emergency. And then you get these moments of just pure, unbelievable, terrifying coincidences. Get this. Way out in concrete Washington, a guy is listening, and he hears the militia has been totally wiped out. And at that exact moment, a power failure hits and plunges his entire town into darkness. Can you even imagine? In the total silence, in the pitch black, he does the only thing that makes sense to him. He grabs his shotgun to go defend his family from the invaders.
Okay, let's hit pause on all the chaos for a second and just pull back the curtain here. Because what Orson Welles and his team did, it wasn't just telling a scary story. No, they basically performed psychological surgery on the American public. And the real genius was all in how they formatted it.
They completely hijacked the language of truth,
So first, they copied the format of a real breaking news event, just like the Munich crisis reports everyone had been listening to. Second, they broke the unwritten rules of radio. They completely skipped the station break at 8:30, which, if you believed it was real, was all the proof you needed that this wasn't a scheduled program. And third, the performances were just chillingly authentic. The actors were coached to sound like the famous panicked broadcast of the Hindenburg disaster.
And when psychologists looked back at this, they found that for a ton of people, their critical ability, that logical part of your brain, it just got completely short-circuited. The audio evidence coming from that trusted box in their living room, the explosions, the screaming, it felt more real than their own common sense telling them, no way, this can't be happening. So you see, when you add it all up, it really was the perfect storm. You've got this deep anxiety from the Great Depression. You've got people being primed by the recent war scares. You have this absolute, unquestioning trust in the radio as the voice of truth. And then you have social contagion. You look outside, you see your neighbor panicking, so you panic too. Wells didn't invent the fear. He just gave it a Martian's face.
So the next morning rolls around. It's Halloween, and Orson Welles wakes up to discover he is, overnight, the most famous and maybe the most infamous man in America.
Oh, and the newspapers, they had an absolute field day. The headlines were just screaming off the page, telling these wild stories of suicides and mass stampede. They painted this picture of a nation that had been completely consumed by terror. But here's where it gets really interesting, the story behind the story. Most modern historians now believe that while the panic was definitely real for some people, the scale of it was hugely exaggerated. And why? Well, think about it. The newspaper industry was losing ad money hand over fist to this new kid on the block, radio. So they jumped at the chance to make their competitor look reckless and dangerous. It was really one of the first big battles in a media war over who gets to control the truth.
And right in the middle of this whole media storm was Orson Welles himself, giving maybe the greatest performance of his life at a press conference. He played the role of the shocked, apologetic artist just perfectly. We are deeply shocked. But of course, behind the scenes, he was thrilled. This one broadcast had made him an international star overnight. What an act.
And that's really what's so powerful about this story, what still echoes today. That night was one of the first times America had to grapple with the idea that the media we trust could completely shatter our sense of reality. Think about it. One voice coming out of a wooden box made thousands of people believe the unbelievable. Today, you and I, we carry 1 million of those voices around in our pockets. So you have to ask yourself, is that line between what's real and what's fake any clearer for us now? Or are we all just one really convincing broadcast away from our own personal panic?
And so, another chapter closes. For more journeys into history's forgotten files, please like and subscribe. Your next story awaits.